Welcome to medieval China. Please sit back, get your pencil ready because this is going to take a while. There's a lot of facts, a lot of dynasties to go over. We will be covering the same themes though, why rise and why fall. So pay attention. Let's start with location. Location of China is in East Asia. It borders the Pacific Ocean. There's Russia above it. We got India down to the south, Southeast Asia, Thailand, all that stuff under it. All right. So why did the Chinese civilization rise? Well, we're going back ancient times, or since the beginning of Homo sapiens. They were able to build culture and empire thanks to its location, what the earth provided for it. What did it provide? It provided fertile farming lands. And there's two main rivers, the Huanghe and the Changjiang. They were hotbeds of population, allowed for a lot of fertilization and agriculture. Also, why did they have their own civilization? If you look at the map, you can see the Himalayan mountain range, where Mount Everest is located, as well as the Gobi Desert. This separates them from the Islamic empires in the Middle East, it separates them from India in the south, and so on, and Europe's pretty far away. But those civilizations were the nearest. Also, there's no real medieval period in China. It's a European term. So we live in America and most of our society is founded on European ideals and laws. So we just decided to apply it to everything. So we're just gonna be going over similar time periods and dynasties that relate to European medieval times. So let's start with Chinese Empire. Going back ancient, they united in 221 BCE. That's when the North and the South were united. For the next thousands of years, sometimes that North and South was divided a couple of times. Those were known more as warring periods when people are fighting for power. And each time they became united again, there was one family leading. It was called a dynasty. So yeah, different ruling families usually name those dynasties after themselves. For example, the first one is the Sui or Sui 589. We will get to all of those listed right there. So why did the Sui dynasty rise? Well, this guy named Sui Wenti reunited North and South, but not for very long. He was a really good general, very intelligent, conquered using force. His army took over, united North and South. When he united it, he focused on agriculture, food production. He invested in infrastructure, meaning building roads and buildings and banks and stuff for the people. And people really like that. They like to have things to go to and travel on. They like to see the government working for them. So that's what this guy did. Now, why did it fall? We've seen this before. Sons are not always that great at ruling. His son, Yang Ti, he kept the taxes really high because he had to pay for all that stuff he was doing. And when he finished building this thing called the Grand Canal, he decided to use all that labor and build stuff for himself. And instead of building stuff for the people, now he's building palaces and temples for the rich and the elites. A lot of people didn't like that. They're saying, wait, we're paying all these taxes for you rich guys? I don't think so. Not cool. You're out of here. And in 618 CE, the dynasty ended. Didn't last very long. When one dynasty falls, another emerges. Unfortunately, it took 6 years for another family to unite, to take power, and lead into another dynasty. So we call it the Warring Period. The next dynasty is the Tong Dynasty. It's 624, again, unified North and South again. Because they were worried about everyone rebelling and people not being loyal, they instituted a new code of law. It was easier to keep control, and people were able to follow, and allowed them to stay in political control as well. Now, during the Tong Dynasty, or Tang, they focused on Confucian values, which were, some of them were loyalty to the ruler, maybe loyalty to the father, loyalty to the husband. So just loyalty in general. You see the yin and the yang. There's two sides. One has to be loyal, one has to be a good leader. Also, duty to the people. With this, they had a focus on education, and they instituted a civil service examination. Basically, you pass, you get a good job. Money was not the deciding factor. So people were able, poor people, if they were educated and they learned, they were able to get better jobs and able to move upwardly in the society. Yay! Also, army continued to expand empire, more lands and more money. And during this time also, with that education, they also improved on the culture, advancements in poetry, art, literature, all that stuff, going great. It was called a golden age. Now, why did they fall? Everything's going so great. Well, they continue to expand and expand and expand until they eventually reached the Abbasid Empire. You see that little thing poking out to the left in yellow and hitting the green? They collided with the Islamic Empire, or the Abbasid Caliphate, and they lost the Battle of Talas, and they needed a new general because the old general wasn't doing it. This new general took over and revolted shortly thereafter, okay? So the army is breaking away. They're really far away from the land, their homeland, and the empire is never really the same again after that. In addition, there's smaller rebellions happening all over, the Tibetan rebellion, the peasant rebellion, blah, blah, blah. Until 907 CE, they fell to 5 dynasties and 16 kingdoms. So sounds pretty stable, right? Not really. Okay, lots of families fighting for power. When the Tang Dynasty ended, everyone's fighting over 5 dynasties. So one family takes over, then a couple years later, another one takes over. And it's just all crazy. None lasted long enough to really remember that much. I mean, we do have their names and the families, but nothing super important happened until we come into the Song Dynasty. This is called the Renaissance of China because there were a lot of advancements and a lot of inventions. There were great moral and fair leaders, so beautiful leadership. And there was another focus on agriculture and industry. And when you focus on the agriculture, you focus on industry and producing goods and things like that, you have more for the people, you have more to trade. It boosts the economic growth, boosts the economy. Also, fun fact, the 2 rivers, there's the Yellow in the north and the Yangtze in the south. A lot of the population started to shift from the north to the south, okay? And there's new land down there, there's new farms. So this is known as like a shift south during the Song Dynasty. Why did they fall? The Mongols. Genghis Khan was not having it. So the Mongols, they just destroyed everyone by force. They were amazing warriors. And eventually they took over enough and they became leaders of China, and they founded the Yuan Dynasty. So after 4 centuries, that's 400 plus years, uniting smaller tribes and all this other stuff, Genghis Khan unites all of them and just takes over the entire landmass all the way to Europe. If you watch the map on the bottom, you see it start small, get bigger, bigger. And the dates, it's like every 3 or 4 years, they just add millions and thousands of acres to their land. Okay, so they're amazing warriors, great army. They spread from Pacific Ocean to Europe. They destroyed the Islamic Empire. They went through Baghdad. They burned everything. They really stopped the Islamic Empire from spreading and evolving and advancing in a lot of stuff. They stunted ethnic Chinese culture because when Mongols take over, they bring their own culture. And the Tang Dynasty before them, they had been advancing and prospering in their own culture. And when Mongols came through, just like stopped dead in its tracks and started becoming more Mongolian. And again, Europe was a little too far away to conquer. They did have a couple battles with them, but they were not successful. And then why did the Yuan Dynasty fall? All that focus on war and power, and they were policing all over the place, making sure everyone was doing what they're supposed to do. There was no focus on education and advancements. And there was no focus on economy. They weren't putting money back into farming, into industry. So people not so excited about that. And their spread was so large. You saw how large their empire was. It's hard to keep all that united. When people believe in different things, they had different upbringings, different beliefs, it's hard to keep them united. And since, like I said before, people didn't really enjoy their rule, the formal elite in China wanted power back. And eventually in 1368, they were able to do that. Now, who took over? The Ming Dynasty. This guy, a poor peasant turned rebel general, he secured all of China and expanded southwest. He kicked out the Mongols, and the Chinese Empire kind of got back to what they were doing beforehand. We're talking about social stability, strong leaders, focus on agriculture and farming and industry, all this stuff. And after a while, everything's going great for a couple hundred years. With a combination of weak leadership, we've seen that before, poor sons not being great leaders, in addition to disease and natural disasters, flooding and earthquakes. And also, at some point, they started to rule by terror. They were scaring people into following directions, and that doesn't make people too happy. And as well, the main invasion from the north, the Manchurian invasion, was also a problem. Now, one other thing, as people started to unite throughout the world, and Europe at this time was going through the age of exploration, their ships were going around South Africa all the way to China through the Silk Road. A lot of trade was increasing. And with that was coming new ideas, was becoming new systems, and people were changing in China. They're adapting to all these new ideas. Eventually, the social order started to collapse. That means the elites were losing power, peasants were rising up, the middle class was unhappy and wanted down with the elites. And eventually, the Qing Dynasty was founded in 1644. That's where we're going to stop it for today. Hopefully, you took notes. You understand a little bit about a common theme and rise of a dynasty and maybe a fall of a dynasty. And we'll check back in later. Hope you enjoyed the show. Have a good one.